All right, the Tennessee Titans have a game this week. We talk about the joint practices in Tampa Bay ahead of that preseason game on Saturday, plus the first unofficial depth chart is out. What player groups stuck out? Maybe some surprises, all here on the Titan Squad show. Next.
Tighten up. It's the Titan Squad. Sponsored by Gametime. Everything Tennessee Titans every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the heart of Music City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Squad up. The Titan Squad show starts now.
Welcome to the Titan Squad show. I'm your host, Julian Minnesone, alongside Tyler Rowland and Brad Hopkins. Fellas, game week. How are we feeling?
Tyler, how you feeling?
Hey, listen, I mean, anybody who's watched my stuff, they know I am hyped. Now, I'm hype at a funeral. That's just how I happen to be. But I cannot wait, man. I mean, obviously, it's kind of funny talking about this stuff standing next to a Tennessee Titans legend and Brad Hopkins, who played the game at the highest level. But, hey, that all started because you love the game at the lowest level. And I love football in my heart and soul. It is my life, my passion, and to have football games back. Everybody loves the summer. It was great, but no, I'm ready for a Tennessee Titans football game. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I think what this week will usher in is a little more organization to the chaos. That's what training camp is designed to do, right? It's designed to make you uncomfortable. It's designed to be hard, so that way the regular season is manageable, right? And I think when you start looking across the field and you see jerseys that are of a different color, that kind of puts things in perspective. And also it shows you that the preseason is underway, that they're starting to compete. They're not game planning like if it were a regular season game, but you're starting to see it more look like football, right? And then we're able to then more easily identify what this football team will look like for 2025.
Yes, we will. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So, guys, the unofficial depth chart came out, the first one of the preseason last night. Wanted to take our listeners through that here a little bit and maybe talk about some of the things that stuck out to you. Of course, we go down the line of Cameron Ward, QB1. It would have taken a meteor for hitting the earth for him not to be the QB1. Calvin Ridley, Tyler Lockett, Van Jefferson at receiver, Chigakonkwo at tight end with Gunnar Helm right behind him. Up front, Dan Moore and Peter Skoronski on that left side, Corey Levin at center with Lloyd Cushenberry on the PUP list right now. On the right side, J.C. Latham, Tyler Lockett. On the defensive side, of course, Jeff Simmons, Devondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day up front. You have Femi Oladejo backing up Arden Key, who's on the outside linebacker spot along with Draymond Jones. Cody Barton, James Williams on the inside. Of course, the secondary, Jarvis Brownlee, Darrell Baker at the cornerback spot. Nickel, you got Roger McCrary, Amani Hooker, and Xavier Woods there at safety. Joey Slye, Johnny Hecker, kicker punter, and then James Prochet, punt return, kickoff return, Jaquan Jackson with Chim Dike, the rookie behind him, Morgan Cox at long snapper there. So, you guys, big things that stuck out to you as you look at this first unofficial depth chart. I guess to me, the big thing is we kind of knew this team was going to be young, right? A lot of rookies expected to make an impact, but seeing it from a 360 aerial view, it is jaw-dropping to see how many young players are expected to make an impact right away. Not just the rookies, not just Cam and Femi and Gunner and guys like that, but second-year players as well, like Jarvis, JC, Devondre Sweat, who you're expecting some ascension in year two. That's probably the biggest thing that stuck out to me. What about you guys?
I thought that, first off, you're right, Julian. This is a very young team. I think we'd have a completely different expectation for this team had they went out and spent a whole bunch of money. Now, what they did do is they made improvements up front, which you're obviously going to see Kevin Zeitler on the field at some point in time. Lloyd Cushenberry from last year's investment. Hopefully he'll be healthy. And Dan Moore. I'm particularly talking about the guys up front because that's where they made the most improvement by bringing in older guys. But what that does mean, conversely, is that you've got a lot of young guys that you're trying to develop. But that's what you need to be able to do to build a good team. You have to be able to what? Find the talent, develop the talent, keep the talent. Those are the three measures of success for a franchise. And we know now that they've found the talent. Let's see if now they can develop the talent. And later on, if there's a lot of success, then hopefully they can keep the talent. You muted, Tyler.
I'm just excited to get answers. I just want to see how Cam Ward actually performs at the NFL level. I want to get my eyes on how Femi Oladejo is working with his pass rush moves. I would imagine he's going to get a ton of opportunity. The young players that you're talking about, being able to actually see them compete against the other guys like a Cedric Gray versus James Williams, with James Williams at the front. But I think you're right. It does stand out on the depth chart just how many young players are on here. But I'm curious about how these veteran players are going to lead them. Like, is Jeffrey Simmons going to get back to the all-pro level? I would imagine in the first couple of preseason games, he's not going to play too much. But with so much young talent all over the roster, it is imperative that some of these veterans that the Titans are counting on actually live up to their value in their contract. Jeffrey Simmons got a $100 million contract. There's conversation that he wants new money after he changed an agent. Well, you've had 5.5 sacks in back-to-back years and haven't quite been the all-pro level that you were the 2 years before that. You need to be worth your contract right now before there's new money coming in. Arden Key, they love his pressure rates. I'm not as high on Arden Key as other people in the fan base or that cover the team. Is he going to step up and be a primary rusher so that these young rushers behind him, like a Femi Oladejo, don't have to do too much for this team to win games? L'Jarius Sneed, is he going to come back? He's not on the depth chart because of the PUP. Like, when we look at all the young players on the roster, I flip that back to, okay, well, these veterans better be worth it. I mean, Dan Moore got $22 million per season to be a franchise left tackle. He needs to be that right away for the that's how this works with what they've invested in the offensive line. So I'm curious with the veterans that are on the roster, but I think as we get into the depth chart from a micro level instead of, the macro level that we're looking at right now, there are more interesting things in terms of placement and decisions that they made, like in special teams. I have thoughts about how they've set up the kick returner and the punt returner that I think are exclusive to preseason, so I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But overall, I agree, a lot of young players, which means that these veterans really need to step up.
Yeah, and you think about something I've thought about too, there is a lack of depth to this team, right? You're expected a lot of the starters at least to make an impact, particularly at that corner spot. L'Jarius Sneed being out is paramount to this team. I mean, not that Jarvis Brownlee can't do it. He showed some things last year, but you're expecting ascension here in year 2. But he is not a number 1 corner on the team, at least right now. Darrell Baker's kind of been a journeyman in that front as well. Probably played some of his best football of his career last year, but L'Jarius Sneed being out really hurts this team on that front with the lack of depth. It's kind of like, like in Star Wars where they say, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope for the secondary. That's where L'Jarius Sneed, I guess, is right now, and hoping that he gets healthy soon. But a lack of depth, I think, is certainly one of those things. Wide receiver, I know they have the 2 young guys backing up, Chimere Dike and Alec Iomanner, but you're a little bit older at wide receiver too, and having those guys needing to make an impact. Calvin Ridley, if he's out, then you're toast in that front. So, and of course, Cam Ward with no really QB2 option, real QB2 option. No disrespect to Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle, but the lack of depth, I think, is something also that is glaring, at least if I'm looking at it from an aerial view here too.
Well,
Julian,
speaking of depth, sorry about that.
No, go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make this overall point, I guess, at the beginning of the show before we got too far, because I've been feeling this the last couple of days with the practices over the weekend and all that. But we have to remember this team went 3-14 last year. And you look at the roster, and we're talking about all the young guys and the second guys, and you're talking about ascension, Julian. And you know what? I do it too. I'm not going to get on my podcast and nonstop every day be like, oh, these guys aren't going to be good, because what's the fun in that? Why not believe? Why not have hope that the team But the reality is all these second-year players, a Jarvis Brownlee Jr., a James Williams, Tavondre Sweat, J.C. Latham, the rookie wide receivers, all these young guys, not all of them are going to work out. It's a 9-man draft class and everybody's penciling in every pick to be this and that. And it's the reality is if 3 of the 9 turn into starters for you the next year, if 4 turn into starters, that's a banger draft class. That's a great draft class. Look at the 2009 draft class for John Robinson. It was all time when it first happened with 4 or 5 starters. All 9 of these guys aren't going to work out. All of these second-year players aren't going to take the leap. It's just not going to happen for a 3-14 team. So, we talk about the depth and the young guys and all that. I'm sorry, it's just in my head right now. I'm just hearing us talk about this. We can hope everybody works out, but you're right. Look at corner. If Sneed wasn't even playing great football last year, he had a couple of good games, and people look at the receptions and the yardage and say, but watch the tape. He was getting burnt. He was getting beat consistently all 4 weeks, all 5 weeks that we saw. So I just, even if Snead comes back, is he going to be at the level that they paid for? And then the depth outside, is Jarvis Brownlee Jr. going to turn into or is he an aggressive guy who's a good second guy? McCreary's on the last year of his deal. And then where's the depth out of that, as we're about to discuss? I just have some concerns right now, and we're all hyped up because it's training camp. But looking at the depth chart kind of made me jump scare, whoa, man, this is gonna be a process.
Yeah. Fellas, what I think about is, even though you might not have available the starters that are expected to be in this lineup, like Loie Cushenberry, like L'Jarius Sneed, like you mentioned, Tyler, what that does do is open up opportunities to develop that back end of the roster. You know what I mean? So the depth now gets a chance to get on the football field and show what it can do. And there's nothing better. There's no better teacher than repetition. So while we're talking about maybe some guys not available, whatever else, I did see some bright spots. I like Desmond Evans on that outside, applying pressure in with his long, lean approach. He's got good get off. I like Kevin Winston Jr. This guy seems to be making plays all training camp. He's flying around all over the place. He's setting the tone. Jalen Duncan, here's a guy that seemed like, I thought this dude was, give me a shovel and some dirt. I thought this cat was done, But now he looked like somebody's, got his family held hostage. He's playing some damn football, So the guy's getting, and Jackson Slater, that's another guy that I got in my notes too, is someone that's actually raised some eyebrows, just ooh, So while you might not see, the length of depth that I'm sure that a lot of people would like, but you just can't, there's not 44 starters on a team. It's 22 starters, and that's usually for a reason. But like I said, to wrap it up, it does give those players that otherwise wouldn't be able to see the field a chance to get that game time repetition that allows them to develop.
Is there a position group or player when you're looking at the depth chart now? I know it's just the first unofficial preseason depth chart, but is there something that really sticks out to you? I know there's a Josh Wiley hive out there, but I didn't think that he was going to be, 1 or 2 tight end. Gabe Judy-Lally is the only guy it looks like on the depth chart that's in 2 backup spots. It shows how much they value him, former Vol. So guys, what do you think about maybe some position groups or players that are sticking out to you at the micro level, as I guess Tyler was talking about?
Go ahead, Tyler.
Well, I'll go first. I look at the linebackers. We talked about the linebacker battle all off season long. And the fact that James Williams is just the starting linebacker. He's just there. It's not, they've done slashes, they've done ors, they've done ands, they've done buts, they've crossed the I's and dotted the T's, you know what I mean? But I think that James Williams ascending to the point where, remember, he's a 7th round rookie. Cedric Gray was drafted ahead of him. So there's all the reason in the world to give Cedric Gray more opportunities and to make it even and to say they're in a pure competition and all of that, but they haven't. James Williams has taken that position, and right now it would be kind of a shock if he didn't just keep it overall the rest of the way. So I think that stood out to me. Number one is that there's no caveat to James Williams being the starting inside linebacker next to Cody Barton right now. And I think with his physical tools, a former 5-star recruit, I think that should make Titans fans really, really excited to see James Williams not only be in that battle and still be in it, but looking like he might have won it out of the gate already. He's been that good.
Well, I'm going to look at the running back position because there's a guy that's, obviously did really good work for them last year, but didn't get the repetition that I think he's going to get this year. Tajay Spears, the enthusiasm, the energy, his presence just on the field, even watching his process, walking around the field barefoot before practice. There's a lot of mention about him, right, Tyler? From Brian Callahan all the way to the running backs coach. You're starting to hear them mention him and his role in this offense, right? Even though we know Tony Pollard's a 1,000-yard back, he's very capable. But I think that the way that they handle both of these backs this year is going to be intriguing because you're going to see a lot more number 2 on the football field, and rightfully so. He deserves it. And having gone through what he's gone through, and I heard Callie even mention, not only improvements on the field, but off the field, personally, how he handles himself. You know what I'm saying? It seems like he's growing into this player that it's going to be hard to keep him off the field because of his just ability and, of course, his connection with this roster. He's bought in. He's invested.
Obviously, it's nobody's business but Tajay's. But, yeah, you have heard a lot of that, Brad, of the off the field. He's in a better spot. So, obviously, he was dealing with things on and off last year. But it's not just, he's going to be on the field a lot as a choice. They need him. Like they have to have him. There aren't enough electric playmakers on this offense. There's not enough juice on the offense in general. So he's got to stay healthy. They need him to be on the field. It's, he wants to be on the field. They want to give him more opportunities. I think Tony Pollard might start to show signs. He started to wear down at the end of last year. I just don't think he can be a featured back in a committee, but Tony Pollard can't be a bell cow like Derrick Henry, and they asked him to be that last year, and I'm worried about his health this year if he gets a load similar. So they have to have Tajay Spears step up and stay healthy and be out on the field. They need it.
Yeah, Brian Callahan talked about evening out the load between those two guys. And Tajay, to your point, B-Hop in camp looks pretty darn explosive in the reps that he is getting. Tyler, you mentioned something earlier about the special team side of things. Are we looking too hard into the Jaquan Jackson thing here? Because there was panic on Twitter yesterday when Jaquan Jackson was listed as kick return. Obviously had his issues last year hanging on to the football. I will say, they did hire John Bones Fossil. Mm-hmm. Maybe they feel like there's something that they could unlock there with him and get him on the right side of things. But what do you think about the Jaquan Jackson side of it, where Titans fans seem to be maybe panicking, maybe prematurely? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
Folks, they're doing this because it's the preseason. And they don't want to put Tajay Spears is going to be one of the team's kickoff returners because he's awesome. And it'll probably be Chimere Dike, a guy who they know is making the roster. But the only way Jaquan Jackson makes this roster, the only way, is if he turns into their best returner. So the best way to figure that out, if he's going to make it, is to give him the most kickoff return opportunities in the preseason, because you know that Chimere Dike is going to do it, and you know he's making the team. It's about answering questions that the coaching staff doesn't have the answers to yet. That's why James Prochet is the starting punt returner as well. If James Prochet makes this roster as a 7th wide receiver, I think the top 6 are locked. And it's between Prochet or Restrepo for who gets that 7th spot. If they keep 7, I think 4 tight ends, 9 offensive linemen, 4 running backs may be more beneficial to the team because of special teams purposes than wide receivers. So that 7th wide receiver has to be a special teams contributor, and James Prochet is only going to make it if he is the starting punt returner, which he doesn't have kickoff return experience. He has punt return experience in the NFL. That's what he does. So if he can be the team's starting punt returner, and then, Jaquan Jackson, you talked about the shovel in the dirt. I mean, the hole is buried at this point after that drop in camp earlier this week. But, to me, everyone needs to calm down. They're doing this so that those guys get the maximum opportunities during the preseason so they can earn their roster spot. And if not, then they're not going to make the team. And then the guys behind it'll be Chimere Dike and Tajay Spears as the kickoff returners. It'll probably be Dike as the punt returner. They're just doing that. Sometimes the depth chart is structured in a way to get maximum reps to certain guys so that the coaching staff can answer questions before they make their roster cuts. And that sort of stuff, like Cam Ward working on protection slides and stuff like that Brad would know about in practice against all these pressure looks from Denard Wilson. Brian Callahan's probably thinking, hey, we need to test Cam on his protections today. So, hey, Denard, run every 3rd down blitz you got. I want to see how he handles pressure. Because Levis was terrible at his protection slides last year, and that was one of the reasons that he got hit so much that gets blamed on the O-line, but it's actually the quarterback. So Brian Callahan is trying to stress test protection packages early in camp so that Cam knows that stuff, because it'll kill him if he doesn't, and it just looks like, oh, Cam's throwing a bunch of bad passes and can't complete them. Well, you don't know what the actual motivations of the coaching staff, and I don't know either because I'm not Brian Callahan, but I'm just trying to let people understand that sometimes the decisions you see and the things you hear, you don't understand the true motivation of why the coach is trying to do that. And that's something that you have to think about when you're looking at all of this preseason and training camp stuff.
Real quick, I remember when Aaron Rodgers first started training camp in Pittsburgh, and the first thing he did was throw an interception. And people were starting, and all that stuff. And, they said, hey, listen, pump the brakes. I'm trying stuff. This is where I work out some of those things that I will then put in my repertoire. So while you might think this is a glaring mistake by me, it's something I'm just trying right now to see if it works. And they make a play, great. But at the end of the day, he threw that pick, but he's going to throw a bunch of touchdowns. It's in line with what you said, Tyler. They're trying to see different lineups. They're putting guys in different situations, different positions, because they want to see how they respond and react to those things, those changes that are going on around them. Because if they never, ever happen, the last time you want to deal with them is on the field. You know what I'm saying? So you want to be able to see it in practice. You want to be able to see it when you can manage it, when you can address it, when you can ask questions about it, when you can see it over again, when you can do those things to fix it. So you're right. That's what training camp is about.
Certainly what training camp is about. And one thing that is not in question is who's going to be the starting quarterback on Saturday for the Tennessee Titans. That's Mr. Cam Ward. We'll talk about him and what we need to see out of him before that preseason game next on the Titan Squad Show. All right, everybody. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and the Titan Squad Show are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. Now, I've used Yahoo Fantasy for years. Love using that as they're my choice for fantasy football. I've done it in all my work leagues and all my personal leagues with all my buddies, and you should too. Now, to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. Now, with the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you could still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Now, stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. All right, guys, wanted to talk about Cam Ward. It was a struggle over the weekend. He had a bounce back practice, it seemed like, on Saturday, where they called it the most competitive practice of camp so far. But Sunday wasn't the best showing, to the point where Brian Callahan had some choice words for the guys after practice, words that are not safe for podcast or on air. And he also made them run sprints after practice. So my question to you, Cam Ward, been kind of up and down here of late. Is it a big deal? My thing here, no, because it's really his second week of the job, if you think about it. Seeing NFL speed for the first time, training camp with the pads on, all that stuff. All of us in our second week of any job probably weren't as good as year two of the job. And we talked about Cam Ward, and I think one of our earlier shows when we talked about Kobe Bryant being his favorite athlete. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a Lakers fan. I grew up watching Kobe. I remember him airballing in 97 in the playoffs as a young player, and I'll take his career any day. So I think we need to pump the brakes on the Cam Ward struggles. I think that's going to be the experience when you think about not just Cam Ward, but the Titans as a whole. They are going to have some really good days. They are going to have some not so great days. It's why Vegas has them at 5.5 wins. It's why, like Tyler said, you're coming off a three-win season. A young team that's learning to grow kind of on the fly. I think that's why we need to pump the brakes on Cam Ward. Guys, what do you think? Is it a big deal or no?
Defenses usually react to what they see. Now, I know offenses do a similar thing, and that they basically have to take what the defense gives you. I know you've heard that analogy a million times, right? But when you're thinking so much and it's not familiar to you, you're just not comfortable. And that's what offense is basically built on. Offense is built on scheme. It's built on running routes. It's built on blocking angles. It's built on so many things that we dictate because we're the ones who are offending. Sounds crazy, right? But that's what makes it so uncomfortable for us. And this is the National Football League, guys. It's not easy to come in year one and kick the door in. I know there are instances where that happens, where you've had instant success, seemingly. C.J. Stroud had a heck of a rookie year, right? What happened his second year? You see what I'm saying? It's never easy. Jaden Daniels had a terrific first year. He went to the playoffs, took the Commanders, nobody saw them coming. You know what I mean? So it was a great situation for him to be in. But it doesn't guarantee you that your first pick of the draft is going to come in here and make you feel like Warren Moon, for goodness sake. It's just not going to happen. There are going to be some ebbs and flows, some ups and downs, some wins and losses, and he has to be able to take those things in stride and be able to kind of keep his focus on getting better every single day. So I'm never going to rinse the baby out with the bathwater in this situation when you talk about a young guy that's tasked with coming in here and running an offense that he's never even heard before. He and Nick Holt and Brian Callahan got to get on the same page, understand what Denard Wilson is trying to do to him regularly during practice, and then start getting into a regular routine of during the week and regular season, studying his opponent, making sure that they're on the same page, come up with a precise game plan that caters to his strengths, where they are right now as far as health and who they're competing against. So there's a lot of learning. They've been in practice for less than 20 days. And for us to sit there and give some sort of indictment on who this team is truly going to be, it's impossible. Let's not do that.
Yeah, I also think that for Cam Ward, I'm not worried about him. We talked what Brad just said, what we talked about earlier with he's learning. It's not just, hey, this is the first time I've seen 4 verts against cover 3. It's the protection. It's the whole entire system. He's learning everything. It's not just, seeing this play for the first time against this coverage look. There's also defensive fronts that he has to consider and learn from and everything like that. So there's so much to take in. I am not worried about Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward will be fine. But I do have concern off of this first 2 weeks of training camp. But it's just not Cam Ward. To me, it's Brian Callahan. You look at Jaden Daniels, Dan Quinn, head coach, been a longtime coach in the NFL, knows what he's doing. Cliff Kingsbury, experienced play caller, has called plays for a long time at different levels, was a head coach at the NFL level prior. Those 2 guys have way more coaching and play calling experience than Denard Wilson and Brian Callahan. Now, I think Denard Wilson is really good. I think he's excellent. What he did with the banged-up secondary of the Titans last year and some of the struggles that the offense and special teams created for him, I think Denard Wilson is a good defensive coordinator. But we don't know that Brian Callahan is a good head coach in the NFL. And the fact that he was so frustrated with his team's performance, he added an impromptu practice on Friday. And then he adds the practice. They have 3 straight practices over the weekend, and they don't improve to the point where he's cussing the team out at the end of Sunday's practice. We have joint practices with a playoff team in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. That team, that roster, if Baker Mayfield's out there, if the Titans are playing so bad that they're getting cussed out by the coach, they might get whooped bad by Tampa Bay. And I think Brian Callahan knows that. And Brian Callahan, in my opinion, is coaching for his job this year. He was not Mike Borgonzi's pick. He was Ran Carthon's pick. It was sold as, hey, me and Ran Carthon work perfectly together. We're symbiotic. Well, the Titans rejected everything that Ran Carthon did this offseason. Like, they rejected it. And Brian Callahan was one of his biggest moves. So there's no guarantee. There's no way that we know for sure that this organization is committed to Brian Callahan. He is playing for his job this year, coaching for his job. And I just think that adding the extra practice, ripping the guys, running them sprints on Sunday, he knows that this team is not ready. They're not to where they need to be for how quick the season is about to arrive. And I'm more concerned, not with Cam Ward. I have more faith in Cam Ward to be a good quarterback than I do Brian Callahan to turn out to be a good NFL head coach. He might need to go be an offensive coordinator for 4 or 5 years before his next opportunity, or 3 years. I think he could end up being a good head coach, but he's a really young guy, first time calling plays, first time head coach. Last year, hadn't even called plays in the NFL to that point. We're just like we talk about the growth of the players, there needs to be a massive leap for Brian Callahan as a head coach. And just early in training camp, if I'm concerned about anything, it's that. I'm just wondering whether Callahan really is the guy.
That's one of the things you're learning in training camp too. Is he the guy? I mean, I don't think last year
I want him to be.
Yeah,
seems like a great guy, man. He is a nice guy. I met him personally. He's very courteous.
And last year it was hard with the quarterback play that you had, and you had an O-line that was kind of depleted. So it was hard to tell what he is at his peak of his powers. I will say the job of a head coach is more than X's and O's too. Yes, exactly. It is X's and O's, but it's the leadership aspect. It's, can you galvanize the troops?
And that's the stuff, Julian. That's the stuff that he did good last year with the X's and O's, in my opinion. I know the casual Titans fan who watches on Sunday wouldn't agree, but he got guys open on film, like the concepts that he used, what he was trying to accomplish. I think he did a good job schematically. I think he would be a really good offensive coordinator. It's the leadership stuff and the organization stuff. That's where I'm wondering, is he ready for that stuff? We don't know.
There's two questions you have to ask yourself when it comes to Brian Callahan. One, do they respect him? Two, are they willing to be held accountable by him? He's a nice guy. Everybody likes him, because he carries himself well. He's easily communicated with. I mean, he speaks, very clearly. But at the end of the day, there's two motivations for a player. One, I want to do the right thing because I don't want to get yelled at. or two, I want to do the right thing because I really love the players and the coaches and the team that I'm on, and I don't want to disappoint them. You see what I'm saying? Two different rules of thumb there. You might have this guy that's a tyrant that's be spitting in your face because he's all in your grill, yelling at you about what you did and didn't do, versus that guy that just kind of simply shakes his head at you and just shows that level of disappointment. Like, man, I thought so much more for you. I know you're so much better a player than that. And then a player really responding to that, So I really think that at the end of the day, Tyler, what you said, I mean, is very poignant. You can lose or you can get whooped. Those are two different things.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I could take some shots. I could, at the end of the day, come up with a loss. But if that loss feels like, man, it could have went either way, that means they're competing as opposed to going out there and just getting yard dogged. You know what I'm saying? You're just getting whooped. That means you didn't compete. That means there were so many things that you weren't ready in that game that you can easily say that we weren't prepared. And preparation is the responsibility of the coaches. So I just want to see how this team competes. I don't even care about them winning and losing. They can lose every single preseason game that they have this year. But if it looks at the end like they're getting better from week to week and they had a chance to win in the end, that's all that matters. If you went out there and
that's what I'm worried about.
Right. If you end up getting beat 38-0, or whatever, and you're just not even on the field from the beginning to the end, then that just shows you that your team is not ready to compete and they're not motivated to do it. And it doesn't seem like they're invested enough emotionally, intelligently to make this team better than they are.
And listen, it's a new season and everybody will, it's a new year and all of that. But if you go into joint practices against Tampa Bay and it's obvious that they're a class ahead of you and they're more prepared, the players who are veterans on this team, most of them are free agent signings. The players who are on this team otherwise are young players. Guess who could lose confidence in things really quickly? Guys who are mercenaries who came from other teams, and then young players who don't know. If they go out and they get whooped up by Tampa Bay in that practice, it could hurt their spirit a little bit. And for a young team with a lot of free agents that they're asking to do things, I worry about that going forward. So they need to, you're right, at least compete and feel good about themselves coming out of this weekend.
Yeah, you talked about the accountability piece, and that was part of the offseason program, right? Where Brian Callahan, they did the whole team competitions with erasing sins and self-inflicted negatives. And so I guess when you're not worried about Cam Ward, you are worried about, hey, you've had a whole offseason program of getting rid of those sins. Why are these still happening from when we started earlier, post-draft in the rookie camp to now? That's kind of the big piece there. All right, so on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the defensive side of the ball and maybe expectations for Big Jeff Simmons on the other side of the break here. Keep it locked on the Titans Squad Show. All right, everybody, time to talk about Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, if you will, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Like for myself, I love watching movies, so I have a bunch of subscription services to all the streaming services, all that fun stuff, and this will help me manage all of those things so they don't get out of control. You need to take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use Locked On NFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com monarchmoney.com code Locked On NFL for half off your first year. All right, guys, wanted to talk about defense. We mentioned it a little bit, how they kind of have the cheat code, the spark notes, if you will, being ahead of the game, ahead of the offense there in the early part of camp. But I wanted to specifically talk about Jeff Simmons. Tyler, you mentioned it earlier. He's failed to get 6 sacks in each of his last 2 seasons. However, he is 20 pounds lighter this year. He looks quicker in camp. He looks faster than he's ever been. He says he's feeling good. And the big thing with Jeff is last year he was double teamed a lot. He talked about that throughout the season. The hope is that the weight will certainly help with that. Thoughts on Jeff Simmons and realistic expectations for him, because that pass rush last year, bottom 3 in the NFL. Yeah, it was a mess.
So if this team gets to the playoffs or wins the division, we're going to give credit to his nutritionist, Anna. had a chance to sit down with him on Friday, and he mentioned how that whole process has gotten him to the position he's in right now. The reason why it's super important for him to lose the weight is for stamina. You want him to be able to play 4 quarters at an even level and be able to apply pressure and deal with all the things that Big Jeff has to deal with and not be fatigued, because fatigue makes cowards of us all. You're going to hear a whole bunch of coachisms from me. That's just the way it is, okay? But when talking with this guy, he has accepted that leadership role this year more than any year that I've seen so far. And maybe that's a 7-year itch for him. Maybe that's him being in his system, being in his town, being respected and being revered as the leader that has made him take on that identity. But in my opinion, he's done it. He doesn't mind coaching the guys to the left or to the right of him. He doesn't mind inspiring, if you will, with his verbal, jarring back and forth with the offense. I think it's all not in fun, but in trying to just get this team to compete against one another, because he said iron sharpens iron. And it's true. Does he need help? Absolutely. Because Jeff has to approach every single game knowing that he has to deal with the slide. If you don't know what that is, that means that the offensive line is gearing themselves up to take care of the most dangerous guy on that front, and it's usually him. So they're going to put 4 hands on him every single time the ball is snapped. And he's got to deal with that. It's not easy. No one's going to block Big Jeff one-on-one, because that's just dumb, So I think at the end of the day, he needs Tavondre Sweat when he gets done with that abdominal or whatever else. He needs Arden Key. He needs these guys on the edges to be more of a threat that offenses have to worry about, so that way it frees up Big Jeff to do some of the things that we know he's capable of doing. It's hard being Big Jeff because he does get that much attention, but think about it. It's warranted, because the cat is positioned mentally and physically to take this team where they need to go. Whether they get there or not, that may be another story.
The philosophy that the Tennessee Titans are rushing the passer with, or want to rush the passer with this season, I think lends itself to a big year for Big Jeff. So they've been talking about condensing the pocket, collapsing the pocket. The Titans know, and it's funny, Paul Kaharski, he has needled them about this over and over, that last year they talked about someone has to win the one-on-one matchup, and this year they've talked about collectively rushing as a group. And you know why? Because they realize they don't have guys who are going to win one-on-one matchups very often. And the best thing you can do if you don't have edge rushers who are going to win consistently is have big, physical, powerful edge rushers who can at least speed to power and crush the quarterback back. And then the quarterback's got to step up into your better rusher, Jeffrey Simmons. So the philosophy that the Titans have told us publicly that they are going to use to rush this year to kind of collapse down the pocket is going to flush the quarterback forward and make him step up into Jeffrey Simmons. So that lends itself to Jeff having a big year. But back to what I was talking about earlier in the show, he must have a big year. Again, he switched agents. He went to Athletes First, switched away from Paul DeRosier or whatever, who did his first contract. And that means usually that, hey, there's something coming up and I need better representation than what I currently have. Big Jeff doesn't have much guaranteed money left in his deal after the season. He's going to want to re-up. He's going to want new money, and he's going to be out there ready to earn it, and he better, because, again, the last 2 years, he has not. He had those 2 all-pro seasons where he was second-team all-pro in 2021 and 2022, 8.5 sacks, 7.5 sacks. And then the last 2 seasons, 5.5 and 5. And I'm sorry, for the $100 million contract he got, and he was rated the number 4 best interior defensive lineman in the NFL in the ESPN Top 10 poll that came out this offseason. Well, I'm sorry, but 5.5 sacks a year is not a top 5 interior defensive lineman. And some of that is he needs more help around him and all that, but at some point, he's got to handle his business as well. So not only are the Titans setting up for a big season for Big Jeff, but he must have a big season if he wants to get the money that he thinks he's due during the year or after the year. So it's all lining up for a big year from Big Jeff, and if the Titans want to be at their best, it's going to be because he is an all-pro player once again. And I need double-digit sacks from Jeff. I hate to be the box score watcher. I break down the film and all that, but I want 10 sacks. The best interior defensive linemen in the league are able to get that double-digit sack mark. Chris Jones, Aaron Donalds. If Simmons wants to be that, needs to get 10 sacks this year for the first time in his career.
And we actually talked to Jeff Simmons after practice. Here's a little bit of what he had to say about that new body of his and practicing here in training camp, how he feels. Take a listen.
For me, this game of football, man, you just never know when your last snap may be. And the way I try to approach things is like every snap my last. And, I feel like I really got the Jeff Simmons confidence back. Like the way I've been moving, the way I'm able to, like my pass rush moves, everything just feels so much smoother. I'm being able to transition against the double teams even better now, because all the weight off me, all the, my knees and ankles not so sore when I wake up in the morning. I'm excited to come to work. I think that's been my mindset, is how can I have a positive mindset even when my body don't feel good, even when things not going the right way. I haven't been perfect this camp, but each and every day I take the coaching, I come back out here with the right mindset.
And it's funny when you hear about Jeff's being down in weight, but yet you have to remember he's still 300 pounds coming at you too. And Cody Barton talked about it after practice as well, how it's helped some guys like him where, the offensive line can't just climb to that level and leave Simmons. You've got to take care of him. So it's going to help other guys on the defensive side as well.
Real quick. I know you want double-digit sacks, Tyler, and so does Jeff.
Yes, exactly.
But pressure doesn't just come from up front. Okay,
it's true.
It's a balance. I remember when we played Peyton Manning's teams when he was with the Colts. It was hard to sack him because that ball was out in 3 seconds. Period. He wasn't going to hold it. He wasn't going to pat it. He wasn't, staring down receivers and getting locked up. He that thing was coming out. It was coming out fast. So what I mean by that is the secondary is just as important to bringing down the quarterback as the front is, as the edge rushers are, to alleviate some of that pressure. Because if the quarterback doesn't have anywhere to go with the football, guess what? That means that that clock is ticking, and eventually he will be tackled. And that's how you end the play. But if you've got somewhere to go with the football all the time because coverage is lax, or because there are guys wide open, because the scheme just isn't working, that to me adds more pressure and more problems for a guy that in the middle of that defense, is tasked with doing, just like you mentioned, Julian, keeping the linebackers clean, allowing them to make the tackles. Who are your leading tacklers on every single defense? It better damn well be your linebackers, because you got 4 dudes in front of you that are insulation that should keep that offensive line from getting to you. That's their job, is in part. While they're still rushing the passer, there's other parts of that defense that you have to be able to manage, and that's one of them. So I'm just going to go throw that out there. The secondary is just as culpable in helping Big Jeff get double-digit sacks as the edge rushers are, that the other 3 technique opposite the center is, as anybody else. Sure, I think that he's got the right mindset. You heard him. He looks focused. He's taking the coaching. He's trying to apply and get better every single day. And this is a 7-year guy talking about reinventing himself, right? It's not some rookie. So he's willing to at least do whatever it takes to get himself better, mind, body, and soul. And I, too, can understand and sympathize what he's talking about. I was 346 pounds at my highest, okay? When I lost that weight, I was a more focused player, and I didn't hurt as bad because I didn't have so much weight stressing my joints and having to deal with all that stuff and carrying around all that weight. It takes a lot of horsepower, man, to lug that stuff around. And the fact that he can shed some of those pounds, and be in the face of those interior linemen and ultimately in the face of the quarterback, I think he's in the best position he's been in a long time, fellas.
And Brad, that's something that makes you feel better later in the season too, right? Because you haven't been carrying that weight the whole time, which in theory could mean a better finish to the season when other guys do start to wear down, if he's in that peak physical shape, not only, down to down, game to game stamina, but throughout the season, the longevity of it, it could lead to Jeff being at his best later in the season, where in recent years, especially 2 years ago, he missed some games at the end of the year with some injury. Hopefully it gives him a full productive season where he feels good throughout all the months.
And we'll see how it goes for Big Jeff. He certainly is looking the part, at least in training camp right now. And finally, on the other side of the break, our last segment, we're going to talk about the joint practice coming up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what we need to see from them as the Titans get going here in the preseason here on the Titans Squad Show. Keep it here. All right, guys, joint practices with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. They have one final practice here in Nashville tomorrow before heading to Tampa. Now, you could see in practice they're itching to hit somebody else other than their teammate. I think a lot of the guys talked about that, including Cody Barton. Here's what he had to say.
But I've been doing it for a minute, so you still get the urge, though. I mean, it's just different, right? Like, stand on your feet. Like, you got shots where you can line up somebody and you can just kill them. But, you got to protect your teammates, right? And be smart. this is getting your body ready to make it for the long haul of the season. But, you know, like I said, you know, the next 4 or 5 days is going to be about that time where we're going to be itching to go, you know, hit somebody else.
Yeah, and there was the first fight, I guess you would call it, of training camp this past week with Jarvis Brownlee and Mason Kinsey getting into it with each other. Jeff Simmons pushed down Calvin Ridley. I believe it was the practice before. Jarvis hit Ridley too, and so it was getting real chippy out there. What are you expecting from the joint practices this week of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and what do you hope to see in those kinds of practices? Hitting another player from the opposite side for the first time.
Go back to segment 3, competing. You just want to see that these guys have the will to get out there and mix it up with guys that don't wear the same color jersey. Expect the most intense part of training camp, maybe even the season. You got full pads, full speed, mano-a-mano. There's no help. There's no protection in 7-on-7 or 1-on-1s. DBs and wide receivers, they go at it just like offensive linemen and defensive linemen. It's press coverage, not zone, right? Coaches want to see just how well you can compete against the other team, and they have a great view of just you. They're looking at you, okay? So, you know, games have plays. They run schemes. There's all kinds of things to follow. At the end of the day, you know, it's really about getting out there and being in the most intense environment that you're going to be in, because it is exclusively you, showing that you can make a roster. If you're a starter, you don't want to go out there and get embarrassed and get shown up, especially by some young dude that's trying to make a team, right? Because that's what's going to help him, is if he goes out there and wears you out. Or if you're a dude that's trying to make this roster, you want to go out there and put your best foot forward by going out there and showing that you can handle your business. And there's no better stage than one-on-one, than basically joint practice, because joint practices give you the intensity of a game, even though this is just practice. And the coaches get more ideas about who you are in those situations than they ever will anything else.
Yeah, that's a great point. I will zoom in off of the big picture point and just look at some individual things that I want to see. Last year, Tampa Bay was 3rd in the NFL in blitz rate. And we know that Todd Bowles loves to bring the pressure. That's what he does. He's always been that way. That's what's going to happen. Well, the Denard Wilson defense likes to bring a lot of exotic pressures as well. So is Cam Ward, all of this stress testing, you guys ever watch the food shows or the bar shows where they come in and it's a crappy restaurant with cockroaches everywhere and the food's bad and they're trying to save it? Well, they build it up, they change the things, and then they do the stress test. And they flood them with customers on the first night and just absolutely destroy them and figure out everything that they suck at. Well, that's what this Tampa Bay joint practice is to me, because Todd Bowles is going to bring the house at Cam Ward. And all of these protection schemes that they've been implementing and getting Cam Ward to work on, seeing all these looks from the Titans defense, how is he going to handle that? He should be prepared a little bit more than normal because the defensive pressure and the philosophy is a little bit similar. So I want to see that. Also, Tampa Bay has a good offensive line. Now, they're going to be missing Tristan Wirfs, of course, because he's banged up. But the rest of the offensive line is pretty good for Tampa Bay. So I want to see how the Tennessee Titans pass rush, who most people, I would say, don't expect them to be very good. They weren't very good last year, and I don't see a ton of improvement, honestly. So I don't think the Titans pass rush will be very good. I want to see how they perform against this Tampa Bay offensive line. And then, look, we talked about the secondary and how helpful that can be. And we also talked about the depth issues at cornerback with no L'Jarius Sneed. Well, Tampa Bay has a great, maybe the best in the NFL from a depth perspective, a great wide receiver group. So how does that secondary with young players and a lack of depth, how do they handle that? That's what I'm interested to see most, is that offensive line, the defensive line, the pressure against Cam, and then how this secondary with a lot of questions handles a great wide receiver group. There are some real position versus position battles within this joint practice that I think are going to tell us quite a bit about where the Titans are at in terms of like a temperature check of how they're going to perform, because I am personally very high on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers football team. I think they're a great roster, and I think it's a good test for the Titans at certain spots for sure.
Real quick, Julian, I don't think that you're going to see a whole bunch of scheme, because they're not going to waste good looks on preseason.
Well, I mean in the joint practice, not the preseason game, but maybe they don't do that in the practice.
I'm talking about during the week. I'm talking about during the week of practices. I don't think you're going to see them dial up a bunch of exotic stuff, even the game. They won't get to that point because at the end of the day, this is really about when you lose a preseason game, what makes up for the preseason game? Your ability to joint practice and your ability to get some work in so that way you can see what kind of roster that you have. So I think you're going to see a lot of work from young players, which means it's really just about competing. It's really just about the foundation, the fundamentals. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think you're going to see a bunch of, like, even if Tristan Wirfs was, reasonably healthy, you're not going to see him in the lineup. Even if you
in the joint practice, you don't think that they would have the ones versus ones in joint practice?
They will, but not to the degree that you're going to have the backups do it. Those ones might get a series. Maybe they get 6 or 7 plays, but ultimately they're trying to determine what the back end of that roster looks like competing against an uncommon opponent. So I just don't think that you're going to see them ramped up and be able to go out there and compete as one-on-ones, right? The ones versus ones. But I think that most of what we're going to see are those situational battles, those positional battles that then determine how these players look. And so that way we can peg them in certain situations and say, well, this guy really competed against the Bucs. This guy really looked good against the Falcons. And he were able to do some of the things that we want him to do in practice. So I just think you're going to see a lot more of the backup players in that situation than you would the starters. Not that the starters won't get reps, but I think you just see more of the backing, so that way they can develop their roster and figure out who they have.
The biggest thing, just getting better at the little things within the playbook. Just getting the ball out on time on certain situations, certain downs, and then also just seeing the fronts that the defense can present, knowing the right calls I need to get to in the protection game. Then I just think at the end of the day, it's always about just timing the ball placement. That's something that me and the receivers are harping on, as we get our journey started, and I'm excited to see where it can go.
Did you feel like your timing was a little bit better today?
I think my timing has been good every day. Just on certain reps, it might not be where I want it to be. But it also, I'm throwing 15, 16 different people every play. And so that's something that, we got to stay after practice and continue to get work on.
All right, well, that's Cam Ward breaking it down. Julian is having a fire alarm issue, but that's training camp. All right, the final thoughts here. I guess, Brad, we've seen the depth chart. We've talked about some of the individual battles. We're looking ahead to the joint practices. Right now, what's your expectation for the team in that preseason battle against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Are there any players or any spots that you're looking at the preseason game like, I can't wait to watch this guy play?
Well, I mean, I'm going to go back to the offensive line because for me, those guys have to show the most improvement from what was problematic for them last year, right? And there's a lot of new faces.
Yes.
There's position moves. We've got JC playing, moving from left to right. We've got a brand new experienced right guard in Kevin Zeitler. We've got a new dude in Dan Moore who is only going into his 5th year. I'm hearing Bill Callahan talk about giving him as much instruction as he is a younger guy. I'm thinking,
right,
5 years and $20 million a year, whatever it is. You coaching him like that? There should be some stuff that's already baked in, right?
You would think for that money.
Right, I get it. But there's, it's a new system. It's a new environment, new players. You got to learn it. So I just want to be able to see them work together and give Cam Ward ample time to do what he needs to do. He's still, like he just mentioned in that clip, needs to be quick, needs to be precise, needs to understand exactly what the defense is doing against him. But he also has to have time to do his job. Yes. Right. And then conversely, what those big bodies have to do is also bring in the balance of a run game. Open those holes for Tony and Tajay. Let them be consistent. Let them stay in third and manageable down in distances so the expanse of the playbook is wide open. There's very few plays for 3rd and 20. It's just a reality, right? So I think at the end of the day, I want to see the big bodies take that step forward of playing together, of playing consistent. I know we're not going to see Lloyd Cushenberry in the middle, which I really hope that we do at some point in time. Not taking shots at Corey Levins, but I'm just saying they need their starters and need to be at the best capabilities that they can be at. And to me, it just starts up front. What do you think, Tyler?
No, I'm with you there. Like you talked about Jalen Duncan. I mean, rave reviews right now with Jalen Duncan. So it's 2 backup offensive linemen I'm very interested in. Jalen Duncan and then Jackson Slater. Because I got to tell you, Brad, we'll see how it all works out. But I'm just not a huge believer in Dan Moore as a long-term solution. I think it's a stopgap. They had to have somebody. They had to have a decent offensive line. He was the only decent option for the money that they could get. But I think you look at Jalen Duncan, maybe he can progress to compete with Dan Moore next year. And Kevin Zeitler's 35 years old. I think he could do a good job this year, but, he's not a long-term solution either. So Jackson Slater being as good as he's been in some run periods in practice, that's just very exciting for me as someone who's, again, going back to my first point, I'm not quite convinced that this team is just going to turn it around and be a playoff contender and all of that. I think there will be struggles with all the young players that are expected to play. But if some of these young players who aren't expected to start right away, if they can show some signs, it'll give me hope for the future that maybe next year's Tennessee Titans can be even better with more long-term answers out there. Last question here to get us out, Brad, as a guy who's played in these preseason games and done it, what was your mindset as a young player going into a preseason game?
Well, I knew it was limited. Being a starter from day one as a rookie, I knew that I was going to have just a little bit of an opportunity to get in there and get my feet wet and get out.
Yeah.
That's why I thought that you're going to see less of the starters and more of the back end, because it was really about camp battles, position stuff, and seeing what you have. Because guess what? When the regular season starts, those dudes don't see the field. This is their season. You know what I mean? So you need to get as much work out of them as you possibly can. So I knew that going into the situation, I was going to have to compete. I was going to have to fire off. But then guess what? I get to enjoy my hot dog for the second half. So that was always the cool part. But it is also being able to go through the rehearsal of getting your mind right. What I mean? This is the first time in preseason where I'm going to emulate what I'm going to be doing in a game. So I need to go ahead and start developing that process now. So that way, by the time the first regular season game fires off, I'm ready to go. I've already done it 3 times. I'm familiar with what I'm going to do. This seems to work. I might make some adjustments here and there, but for the most part, I know what I'm doing. And that's the important part.
Yeah, absolutely. Great insight there from a legend, the Tennessee Titans franchise. Honor to work with you. Honor to work with Julian as well, as he's dealing with some issues off on his own. But for me, your backup quarterback host for this Titan Squad show, Tyler Rowland. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And, of course, tighten up.